Day 2, Day 3, Day 4. A few moments later.
10 seconds later.
12 seconds later.
1 minute later.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
2 very boring minutes later.
5 minutes later.
A few minutes later.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
11 minutes later. 15 minutes later.
20 minutes later.
Many minutes later. 1 hour later.
2 hours later.
3 hours later.
5 hours later.
6 minutes later.
6 hours later. 6.5 hours later.
7 hours later.
8 hours later.
Approximately 10 hours later. 12 sleepless hours later.
Several hours later. Several song-filled hours later.
Many hours later. Many unbearable hours later.
24 hours later.
The next day.
12 o'clock midnight. 3:28 a.m.
The next morning.
1 pair of pants later.
1 shift later. 1 extremely annoying shift later.
2 idiots later.
Montage.
What follows is a brief construction montage. We hope you enjoyed this brief construction montage.
1 winner later.
1 long angry line later.
1 operation later.
A few inches later. Several bad puns later.
A lot of boring math later.
298 frozen patties later. Thousands of tears later.
3,000 whoop-whoos later.
5,000 celebrities later.
80,000 impressions later.
Would you please stop imitating me? It is starting to get very annoying.
Opening night.
The very next evening.
8:01 p.m.
Epilogue.
Tomorrow for sure. Day 2.
2 days later.
48 hours later. Day 3.
3 days later.
72 hours later. Day 4.
4 to 6 days later.
Several days later.
4 to 6 more days later.
1 week later.